Welcome to the Workology Podcast, where we discuss the science and art of the workplace, gain powerful insights, resources, and perspectives on the industries of human resources and recruiting. Join your host, Jessica Miller-Merrill, chief blogger at bloggingforjobs.com, for an in-depth and no-holds-barred look into the future of our most powerful business asset, the employee. And now, welcome your host, Jessica, with this podcast episode of Workology.
It's been the talk of the human resources and recruiting world since the announcement hit the wire on August 9th. I'm talking about Randstad's acquisition of the job board monster. And today I'm talking with a noted talent acquisition analyst, Kyle Lagunas. Kyle, welcome to the Workology Podcast.
Hey, Jessica, thanks for having me.
So let's get down to the nitty gritty. Let's talk a little about Monster. So Monster's reportedly being acquired for $429 million. I kind of want to put my pinky up when I say that, like $1 million. And that is $3.40 per share. Why do you think this acquisition is causing such a stir?
Well, there are a number of different elements to the acquisition, both in implications and in reality. So let's start with what we know so far. Monster is a household name. It has a strong global brand as a go-to place for people looking for jobs. And as such, they can command quite a bit of brand power in the advertising world. And so with Randstad, which is a global staffing and RPO company, acquiring Monster, they are getting full ownership and access to that diverse advertising channel. And they're getting more than just the advertising. Of course, Monster has a long-standing database of candidate resumes, job postings, et cetera. There's a lot of potential intelligence that could be gathered from that database and harnessed and used for, we can come up with any number of use cases for that data. But I think that there's a lot more to this than just the data and the advertising. Microsoft also has a broad suite of products. They have been products that notably have been difficult for them to bring to market. They've bought one of the acquisitions in the last, I can't remember if it was 2 years ago or 3, but the acquisition of TalentBin is one that always comes to mind. TalentBin was a fantastic product that was ahead of its time. It was definitely tapping into this trend towards candidate engagement at scale and recruitment marketing, as well as semantic search. And the only other product that we'd seen that was similar to it was telemetry. And telemetry has been bought by Oracle. And so Monster has a pretty strong product offering. They just have always struggled with the go-to-market for these things. So Randstad, on the other hand, has grown through acquisition for years. They've entered new markets through acquisition. They've built out their own technologies offerings through acquisitions. And they have done a pretty good job of incorporating these acquisitions into their broader portfolio of products and services. And so I think that this could be a pretty good thing for Monster. I think that under the new leadership and expertise and historical leadership and expertise that Randstad has had, I think we could start to see some really great things coming out of Monster. Now, on the other hand, it's not all like sunshine and rainbows for this news it has a little bit of foreboding to it as well. Especially for those staffing agencies and RPOs that have used Monster as a dedicated advertising and sourcing channel. What's going to happen to that business? What's going to happen to those businesses? And it's anyone's guess as to what comes of it.
Just yet another reason to diversify your services and technologies that you use.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And also to diversify your sourcing strategy. I mean, I would estimate that the return on investment for job board advertising has probably been on the decline for everyone. It's, revenues at Monster have declined since the recession. But that it's not just because they haven't done a great job of go to market. It's more so because a lot has happened in the last 5 years that job boards as a whole have struggled to keep up with. The emergence of social technology and the how rapidly recruiters took to social as a open playing field for interacting with and finding and engaging prospective candidates who aren't actively looking for jobs. I mean, we've seen entire businesses built around that. And the job boards have not really brought any great social elements to their platforms themselves. I mean, I can't really say from personal experience how that's gone because I haven't used a job board to find a job maybe ever. I think I have a profile on Monster, but I'll tell you that people were much faster to create a profile on LinkedIn, and they're constantly updating it, and they're using LinkedIn for any number of other reasons, both from a networking perspective and from demonstrating subject matter expertise and learning about the world around them. LinkedIn definitely had a lot more value add for job seekers and just white collar professionals, whereas the monsters of the world didn't. Really, the biggest thing they had for offer prospective candidates is potential jobs. And there's just a lot more to the job search and to the candidate experience than finding jobs these days. So there's a lot of opportunity here for Monster to do more and to do better, I think, with some new leadership.
Agreed. Well, and you mentioned LinkedIn, and so they were purchased by Microsoft for $2.6 billion, which is a pretty stark contrast from the $429 million figure. Do you think that because LinkedIn is more about like career, your career, not necessarily just the job search, that's one of the many reasons that they grew differently and obviously are worth a lot more money today?
You also have to let's look at something as simple as just the database that Monster has versus the database that LinkedIn has. Data is currency these days. And I think that LinkedIn has far more current information on its users, and that current information is more valuable, frankly. Whereas, like I just was saying, I haven't personally used Monster and longer than I can remember, but I'm sure that I have a resume posted there from like 2005, Is that resume data even valuable today? I would really argue not. And so there is that side of the acquisition and the price tag to consider. With Microsoft's acquisition of LinkedIn, there was far more to it than just getting a job board or an advertising channel. If you want to look at the database that LinkedIn has versus the database that Monster has, there are significant differences between the two. It's like apples to oranges. The profiles on LinkedIn have users that are mapping out skills and establishing domain expertise and wielding influence. And those are modern, like very modern things. That you just don't really see happening on Monster. It's more of a true social network rather than a destination for matching employers and candidates, which is by and large what Monster has done.
I like it when you say that data as currency, that LinkedIn has far more current information and data, so therefore it's more valuable, especially if, you're like you and me, we haven't been on Monster in, I don't know, maybe forever.
Yeah, I mean, like over 10 years. But then it's also there's more than just how current the data is. It's just LinkedIn is a far more successful business and more successful business model. Monster has struggled to navigate the amount of change that we've seen in the last. I mean, and let's be honest, there has been a significant amount of change in recruiting in the last 5 years. And Monster is one of those companies that has struggled to adapt and to reposition. They've made some good acquisitions that they struggled to incorporate into their existing products and services. But I think that we haven't seen the last of them. I think that this partnership with Randstad has a lot of potential, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens. You know what's interesting to me though, Jessica, is that there are very few people talking about Randstad's role in this, like the opportunity for Randstad here. They've made a number of acquisitions. Like I said, they've grown a lot through acquisition over the years. But even in the last 2 years, they've made a number of interesting acquisitions. One that comes to mind is the outplacement firm and technology platform RiseSmart. Now, outplacement is nothing new, but RiseSmart's model definitely is. It was a much more dynamic platform. They definitely have better resources dedicated to helping both employers offer a value add solution to transitioning employees, but then also to those people who are suddenly out of a job. They have dedicated career coaches and internal job networks, and it's a very cool product. I mean, it really is. It's kind of redefining outplacement. Why the heck would a staffing firm and RPO need an outplacement tool? Well, so they can offer a full end-to-end. It's just building out their full service offering for talent outsourcing. I see Monster as a very similar play, and it's building out their product offering and service offering beyond just your traditional RPO, beyond traditional staffing. And I think we're seeing this as a larger trend in the RPO space. Symphony Talent Group is the parent company of HOTUS and Findly and a number of other talent solutions. And they've recently reorganized their product offering into a single platform that is really around recruitment marketing and employer branding. And they also offer services around those products. I think we'll start to see a lot more of this type of change and this type of direction from the global RPOs, because anyone who has had to manage a global recruiting function, a global talent function, knows just how tiresome it is to manage 70,000 different vendors for ultimately one global function. So if you can partner with a global firm, a truly global firm that has a truly end-to-end talent solution, well, it'll be much easier to put together a business case for investing in that partnership to meet the changing needs of global talent. There's a lot more to this than just like Monster itself. I think we need to look at Randstad's long-term strategy as a whole.
I think you bring up an interesting point is when you think about like human capital management technology, right? And how you like to work with a product suite sometimes because you don't want to have to manage all those different vendors and the integrations and all those different things. Randstad is really mirroring sort of that move.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but at the same time, they're staying vendor neutral with VMS. I think they have a white labeled ATS. I know they definitely have preferred ATS partners, but the core systems required for human capital management, they are not playing with. Instead, they're building out product offerings around the commodity stuff. So they have an employer brand division. Now they have a massive global advertising network. They have an outplacement firm. So they're trying to diversify the commodities offerings while letting you decide what core operating systems you want to use to manage it all.
Well, let's take a bit of a reset here. This is Jessica Miller-Merrill, and you're listening to the Workology podcast powered by Blogging for Jobs. Today, we're breaking down Randstad's acquisition of Monster with analyst Kyle Lagunas. And you can follow Kyle on Twitter at Kyle, Kyle, Lagunas, Lagunas. All right. Well, I feel like we've kind of covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah, there's so much to talk about with this thing. It's so funny how we think the industry's going one way, and then two major acquisitions happen within like the same season, and it's like, whoa, what does all this mean?
Well, let's talk a little bit about Randstad's service and technology offerings, which it also has an innovation fund, which I think this is interesting. So service providers seem to be getting more active in tech funds like these. What do you think is driving this change?
I think there are a couple of different things to it. It's also worth noting that it's not just the services providers that are building these funds. Cornerstone On Demand also has an innovation fund, and they have like dedicated office space for like it's like their own little incubator. And I think that they're doing a few different things. First of all, it's cool. It's appealing to technologists that would like to work in an advisory capacity with startups. There's good energy that comes out of working with startups. Can be a really dynamic relationship where both sides are learning. But then also, if you are investing heavily in a startup that you see has real potential, you can give them direct access to your client base. You can get involved from the ground up in running beta programs and influencing go-to-market and product strategy, and making sure that because your clients often end up being the biggest clients, that the product strategy aligns with your own. So it's not completely self-centered. I think that it also is just good PR. I think that it's good branding for those organizations. But let's be clear, it's a business decision, and I think that it does have business impact.
Certainly. And what better way to keep your pulse on what's happening in emerging HR technology
Exactly.
than to be investing in that same tech?
Exactly. And I think that that's a really great point. And I mean, that alone can stand on its own, especially if you're making smart investments and you're making money on top of it,
You have a funnel of applications coming to you so that you can always see what's new and fresh because they want to be considered to be part of that fund. So you don't have to necessarily go seek those people out or spend all your time over on AngelList or something. You can have those people coming to you.
Yeah. And also, I mean, you are working with creative minds and innovative people, people with energy and passion, and that reinvigorates your own product strategy, your own technology, your own service offering, because there are people that are constantly pushing the needle and coming up with new and creative ways to do things. And so it's like, well, this product is really great. It's perfectly aligned with what we're doing. Maybe we'll make an acquisition. And you see that happening every once in a while.
Interesting. Well, let's get back to the Monster acquisition because there's a new story that's sort of developing, and it includes a recent letter to the Monster Board of Directors by Media News Group. And this Media News Group is a group of newspapers that have job boards, and they control 11.6% of Monster shares. So this letter calls for shareholders to refuse the repurchase of shares. And the company, this Media News Group, released a press release today of the recording, which I'll include in the resources and sort of additional information section of the transcript. But it calls for some changes and suggests that Monster shouldn't go through with the acquisition, and they should instead implement a plan to reduce Monster expenses, which they've sort of outlined in some bullets, between $100 to $150 million over the next 6 months. Have you ever seen anything like this in HR tech, Kyle? I haven't, but I'm curious on your perspective on this.
Yeah, I haven't either, but I'll also be honest. Like, I am not an acquisitions expert whatsoever, so I'll just speak to my passing perspective on this very recent news. Like, when did the letter even go out? Was it this
morning? The 19th.
Yeah. So
I don't know Media News Group. I haven't spent any time vetting them or evaluating their business or even, frankly, looking at the job boards that they claim to have, the job board business that they claim to have. So this is just pure conjecture. But it honestly reads as somebody that doesn't want to lose their hand in the pie. You know, they are suggesting some drastic change that could be had that they think is attainable by Monster in I don't know what the next like 2 to 3 years, where they think that they could actually drive that Monster itself could achieve a higher stock price in the next 18 months through just these changes. And it's like, I mean, honestly, where were you over the last 10 years when Monster has been struggling and their stock prices have been plummeting? Like, if it's that easy to turn this ship around, then why did you wait until this acquisition before you speak up? And the answer to that, and again, this is pure conjecture. This is not me basing this on formal research. And you know me, as an analyst, as a researcher, I don't ever want to speak my opinion as fact, because it's not. I want to make sure that I'm very straightforward with what's just opinion. I really think they want more money. They want more money out of the sale. Now, they're not contesting a sale. They just think that Monster should be getting more for more. And by pushing for this, by challenging this acquisition, they're really saying, well, like, we want more. We want more money. Now, what's interesting is they're talking about having a successful job board business and a lot of experience with job boards. But it's like I'm an industry analyst covering talent acquisition, and I have been doing this for 5 years. Why haven't I heard about you? And part of it is that this is just an incredibly crowded market, and the vendor landscape is just expanding rapidly. Like, every week there's somebody new. So it's difficult for me to keep tabs on every vendor and solution provider in the space. But I just can't help but think that this is a little bit self-serving and self-centered, instead of like taking a real and valid issue with the acquisition itself. I think it'll be really hard for them to actually get any traction behind this.
I would have liked, and they won't do it, but I would have liked for them to disclose, since they own almost 12% of Monster shares, what did they purchase said shares for? And what are they going to make off the sale at the amount that was agreed upon versus the suggested amount with the plan that they outlined? Because it looks, it's over $3 more a share. It would be pretty significant.
Oh, yeah, it definitely would. But I mean, like I said, if it was that easy for Monster to course correct, especially we're talking an 18-month timeline, I'm sorry, but they would have, they would have. I will say it's not like Monster is going to continue to struggle under this new leadership. I really do think that this is going to be a good partnership for both companies. But we'll see the Monster business hopefully improve. But it's not going to just have an overnight. 18 months really is, in greater scheme of things, is an overnight course correction. 18 months is a very short timeline for the kinds of changes that they're saying are feasible, and I've just never seen a company turn around that quickly, and I don't think that they could.
No, but I still think it was interesting that this Media News Group took this particular approach.
Oh, I think so too. It is pretty interesting. When you shared the article with me, I was like, what? Okay, well, let me read this. It's just I hadn't seen anything like it.
No. Well, it will be interesting to see what some of the other industry luminaries think about this particular topic and positioning, and communication that the Media News Group took. But who knows?
Yeah, who knows? And that's the other thing to remind ourselves with all of this, right? We don't know. We can only pontificate and prophesy so far. But at the end of the day, I don't know exactly what the full potential or full reasoning is behind this acquisition. I don't know what is going to come, but I've got a pretty good idea that this makes sense. And I'll say the reason why this makes sense to me is because I feel like I have a better perspective on Randstad's plan rather than just I'm not as caught up in Monster's history. And that's what I have seen a lot with some of the other pundits and bloggers writing about the acquisitions. Most of them are just focused on what Monster was rather than where the industry is going and what Randstad's plans are and where Monster fits into it.
Well, it's kind of sentimental. I mean, I think about the first time I encountered Monster. I was just getting out of college, just starting my HR career. So it's kind of like, when we watch those 80s and sitcoms on Netflix and we get a little nostalgic.
Yeah, that's true. Although, what's funny is like my boyfriend was watching Friends the other day, and I'm like, just having it on the background was irritating me. I was like, oh my God, do people actually used to care about that kind of stuff?
We might have some Friends lovers on the podcast. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, no hate for Friends, but yeah, I mean, I'm more looking ahead, and I think that's what we should all do with this acquisition and with any. I mean, the past should definitely gives us an idea of the potential. But I think that you also have to put their past performance in the context of Randstad's and also Randstad's history of successful acquisitions. Usually that's the biggest stinker that people raise about any acquisition is like most acquisitions fail. But Randstad's got a pretty good history of successful acquisitions. I think this won't be any exception. They've got their work cut out for them for sure, but I think this should be pretty good.
Well, it'll definitely be a fun fall conference and technology season for certain. Maybe there'll be more acquisitions underway. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and if I could give it my own shameless plug, just to speak to how much things have changed in HCM, but then also in talent acquisition itself. So I recently joined IDC, International Data Corporation, which is a global IT research firm. They've invited me to join the team and launch my own research program covering exclusively talent acquisition and RPO and staffing. And I think that investment says a lot for how much more we can expect to happen in this space. Having the opportunity to cover this space exclusively is exciting for me. But I think it says quite a bit about how much more there is to come.
Well, where can people go to learn more about you and what you do?
Yeah, so honestly, I'm really bad about blogging and tweeting and like getting out there on the social web, on the intranets. But I'm always at events. I do a lot of the user conferences, of course, but a lot of the main industry conferences. I'll be at HR Tech Conference in October. I'm actually joining a few colleagues on the main stage. I'm sponsoring 2 solution providers for this year's Awesome New Technologies Awards for HR Tech. And yeah, I mean, otherwise, you guys can find me on LinkedIn, Kyle Lagunas. I'm not a lion by any chance, but I definitely am always open to connecting with other curious minds and, compelling individuals.
If you're in Chicago for HR Tech Conference, find Kyle and buy him a drink. And you can talk all about the future of talent acquisition. So thanks, Kyle, for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. It's been fun. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Well, and thank you to the listener for joining the Workology podcast today, where we discuss and continue to discuss the science and art of the workplace HR and recruitment. This is Jessica Miller-Merrill, and until next time, you can visit Blogging for Jobs to listen to all our previous Workology podcast episodes. See you later, guys.
Production services for the Workology podcast with Jessica Miller-Merrill provided by TotalPicture.com.